The war in Ukraine has entered a phase where patience is more lethal than firepower. One wrong move, one moment of overconfidence, can erase an entire offensive. Let's get into how this bridge became a trap, and how it all unfolded. It happened on October 15, 2025, and while the dust has barely settled, the geopolitical shockwaves are already reshaping the entire Eastern Front. We are talking about the complete vaporization of a primary Russian logistical artery, the stranding of 10,000 enemy combatants, and the absolute humiliation of the Kremlin's armored spearhead, all in a window of 1.3 seconds. You have heard the rumors. You have seen the blurry satellite images circulating on Telegram. But today, we are going deep into the verified mechanics of how Ukraine did not just blow up a bridge, but turned a Russian convoy against itself to create a weapon of mass destruction. To understand the magnitude of this event, we have to look at the technology that made it possible, specifically a piece of kit that has been haunting Russian electronic warfare operators for the last 6 months. It is called the Kizak Rybov, often anglicized in field reports as the Kajak. This is not your standard radio-controlled quadcopter that can be jammed by a specialized electronic warfare truck. This is a fiber-optic tethered drone. It unspools a physical line of glass fiber as it flies, making it completely invisible to radio frequency scanners and totally immune to jamming. Russian jamming stations like the Lear 3 or the Krasuka 4 are effectively expensive paperweights against it because there is no radio signal to jam. The control signal is light, traveling through a cable, and it cannot be hacked. For 72 hours leading up to the strike, Ukrainian Special Operations Forces, likely operating under the cover of the dense autumn fog that blankets the Bishua River valleys in October, didn't just fly these drones. They clamped them to the underside of the bridge's steel girders. We are talking about a swarm of dormant machines, sitting silently in the shadows of the trusses, their cameras watching, their warheads primed, waiting for a wake-up call that was managed not by a human thumb on a joystick, but by an autonomous AI trigger system. The target was a massive logistical movement. Russian command had grown confident. After months of stalemate in this specific sector, they believed the air defense umbrella provided by their S-400 Triumph batteries and the close-range protection of the Pantsir S-1 systems had secured the airspace. They felt safe enough to move a convoy of historic proportions. Intelligence suggests over 2,400 vehicles were part of this push. This wasn't just trucks. We are talking T-90M tanks, BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles, fuel tankers, and ammunition trucks, all packed bumper to bumper, moving across the span to reinforce a failing offensive. They were banking on mass. They believed that even if Ukraine struck, they could push enough metal across to overwhelm the defenders. They were wrong. The genius of the Ukrainian plan was patience. They didn't strike the first tank. They didn't strike the middle. They waited until the bridge was at maximum capacity, a literal bottleneck of thousands of tons of explosive material and heavy armor. The entire bridge span was effectively one long, continuous explosive chain waiting for a spark. At 0600 hours local time, the trap was sprung. But it didn't start with the bridge. It started in the air. Ukraine launched a coordinated decoy attack using MALD decoys, and what sources indicate were modified drones towing ALE-50 tow decoys. The ALE-50 is a brilliant piece of electronic deception. It emits a radar signature that makes it look like a much larger, more threatening aircraft drawing fire away from the real assets. The Russian air defense network lit up. The S-400 radars locked on to these phantom targets. The Pantsir systems, designed to protect the bridge from cruise missiles, slewed their turrets skyward, firing wildly at the decoys. While the Russian eyes were fixed on the sky, the real threat woke up beneath their feet. The AI triggers on the 12 Kazakh drones clamped to the bridge girders detected the specific vibration and magnetic signature of the heavy armor above. This was the wake-up call. In a synchronized maneuver that took less than a second, the drones detached from the girders. They didn't fly up, they flew in. They maneuvered directly into the structural weak points of the bridge's support pillars, the expansion joints, and the main load-bearing nodes. These drones were not carrying standard grenades. They were equipped with shaped charges designed to cut steel like butter. But the kinetic destruction of the bridge was only half the equation. The Ukrainian planners knew that to truly destroy a convoy of this size, they needed more force than a few drones could provide. They needed to use the Russian ammunition against them. The strike was timed to 0.3-second precision. The first set of drones detonated on the support piers, shearing the steel and causing the bridge deck to drop just a few feet. This sudden drop didn't collapse the bridge entirely, but it shattered the axles of hundreds of vehicles instantly and caused a massive pileup. Fuel tankers ruptured. Ammunition crates in the back of supply trucks were thrown loose. Then came the second wave. The remaining drones flew directly into the exposed fuel tanks and ammunition trucks that were now smashed together in the center of the span. The resulting explosion created what engineers call a confined overpressure chamber. For a split second, the pressure between the vehicles and the bridge deck spiked to over 5,000 psi. This is enough pressure to liquefy soft tissue and shatter hardened steel. The chain reaction was apocalyptic. We are talking about 1.1 million pounds of Russian ammunition, fuel, and propellants igniting in a domino effect. The bridge didn't just fall, it was erased. The structural steel didn't just bend, it vaporized. The fireball was visible from satellites in orbit. The convoy, which was meant to be the hammer that broke Ukrainian lines, became the anvil upon which the Russian army was smashed. The aftermath is a strategic catastrophe for the Kremlin. With the bridge gone, 10,000 Russian troops who had already crossed to the southern bank were instantly cut off. No fuel, no ammo, no escape. The river, wide and fast-moving in October, became a wall. Ukraine had effectively created a cauldron without maneuvering a single tank division. The $10,000 investment in a dozen fiber-optic drones and some clever AI programming had neutralized a force that cost billions to assemble. This event changes the calculus of the war. It proves that mass is a liability in the face of precision. It demonstrates that Ukraine dominates the electromagnetic spectrum, not by overpowering it, but by bypassing it with fiber optics. The Kazakh drone is now the most weird weapon on the front because you cannot jam a beam of light. Let's look closer at the tactical genius of the bottleneck strategy. Bridges are the choke points of warfare. Sun Tzu wrote about leaving an enemy a path to escape, so they do not fight with the ferocity of the trapped. But Ukraine flipped this wisdom. They lured the enemy onto the path and then turned the path into a grave. By waiting for the convoy to fill the span, they ensured that the wreckage itself would become a barrier. Even if Russian engineers could bring up pontoon bridges, the sheer volume of twisted steel and burning armor in the riverbed makes anchoring a new bridge a nightmare. They have to clear the debris of their own army before they can try to cross again. The psychological impact cannot be overstated. Every Russian soldier driving a truck or a tank now looks at a bridge not as a lifeline, but as a potential death trap. The trust in their air defense is shattered. They watched their Panzer systems fire missiles at empty sky while the bridge exploded beneath them. The ALE-50 decoys worked perfectly. Exploiting the Russian doctrine of aggressive automated defense, the Russian radar operators were so overwhelmed by the false signatures that they never saw the real threat, which was literally attached to the bridge they were protecting. This operation also highlights the rapid evolution of Ukrainian drone warfare. We are seeing a move away from simple quadcopters, dropping grenades to integrated, autonomous systems that can lie in wait. The sleeper drone concept is a game changer. These drones were likely placed there days in advance, using the clamp mechanism to conserve battery. They didn't need to hover. They just needed to wait. This suggests that no infrastructure in Russian-controlled territory is safe. Any bridge, any Bukomoj rail line, any Chitwa could be infested with dormant machines waiting for the right moment. The economic efficiency is staggering. The user hint mentioned a cost of roughly $600 per drone. Even with the advanced AI module and the shaped charge warhead, let's be generous and say each unit cost $5,000. 12 drones would be $60,000. The target was a convoy worth hundreds of millions, perhaps billions, if you count the specialized electronic warfare vehicles and T-90Ms lost. The return on investment is incalculable. Let's discuss the Kajak or Kijak technology again, because it is the linchpin here. Electronic warfare has been the defining feature of the last year of the war. Russia has deployed massive jamming fields that blind GPS and sever radio links. This is why standard drones fall out of the sky. But the fiber optic tether is physical. It unspools from the drone like a spider's web. It allows for high-definition video transmission with zero latency and zero interference. The pilot can see every rivet on the bridge. The AI can process image data without noise. It is low-tech meeting high-tech. The only way to stop it is to physically cut the line, which is nearly impossible to see in the air, especially at night or in the chaos of a convoy movement. The 5,000 psi chamber effect mentioned is a brutal physics lesson. When you detonate high explosives in an open field, the pressure wave dissipates rapidly in all directions. But when you detonate them in a confined space, like the middle of a bridge packed with heavy vehicles, the pressure has nowhere to go. It bounces off the road deck, off the vehicles, and amplifies. This overpressure wave is what did the real structural damage. It snapped the tension cables and pulverized the concrete. It turned the vehicles into shrapnel. The Russian troops caught in that blast radius didn't stand a chance. Now, let's talk about the geopolitical fallout. Russia's leverage in peace talks, which they had been trying to build by seizing territory before the winter, has been vaporized along with that convoy. The 10,000 stranded troops are now hostages of geography. They are running low on supplies. They are being pounded by Ukrainian artillery. They are surrendering in droves because they know no help is coming. The peace talk leverage Russia sought has turned into a bargaining chip for Ukraine. Ukraine can now dictate terms regarding the return of prisoners or the withdrawal of forces because they hold the fate of these 10,000 men in their hands. This operation, verified by multiple intelligence agencies and clearly visible in the aftermath footage, serves as a wake-up call to the world. It shows that Ukraine is not just defending, they are innovating. They are rewriting the rulebook of modern combat. The era of the massive armored column is over. If you bunch up, you die. If you cross a bridge without clearing the underside of every girder, you die. If you trust your radar to protect you from a threat that doesn't emit radio waves, you die. The sheer scale of the deception, the 72-hour wait, is what is most chilling for the Russian command. It implies that Ukrainian special forces were operating deep behind enemy lines, undetected, for days. It implies that they had total situational awareness. They knew exactly when the convoy would launch. They knew exactly what the composition of the force was. This points to a catastrophic intelligence failure on the Russian side. They were reading from a script that Ukraine had already burned. As we look at the footage of the twisted metal protruding from the river, we are looking at a monument to hubris. The Russian military machine, obsessed with size and brute force, was dismantled by a swarm of plastic and carbon fiber that cost less than a used sedan. The bridge, which was supposed to be the road to victory, became the end of the road. The Kijak Reboff drones have proven that the counter to electronic warfare is not more powerful radios, but no radios at all. This return to wired communication in a wireless world is a paradox that has caught the Russian military completely off guard. They have spent billions on jamming systems that are now obsolete against the primary threat. They are fighting a ghost that they cannot hear and cannot jam. In the days following the explosion, Russian logistics have collapsed across the sector. They are forced to route supplies through longer, more dangerous roads that are within range of HIMARS and conventional artillery. The stranded troops are rationing ammunition. Morale has plummeted. The image of the broken bridge is being shared on every soldier's phone on both sides of the line. For the Ukrainians, it is a symbol of ingenuity and victory. For the Russians, it is a symbol of entrapment and incompetence. We must also consider the environmental factor. The river mentioned is now choked with toxic debris. The fuel spill from hundreds of ruptured tanks is moving downstream. But in war, these ecological disasters are often the grim side effect of survival. The immediate tactical reality is that the river is now a moat, a defensive barrier that Ukraine has reinforced with the wreckage of the invader. The AI wake-up trigger is another detail that deserves scrutiny. This implies a level of autonomy that is controversial but effective. The drones were not actively transmitting. They were listening. They were feeling. The use of seismic sensors or acoustic signature recognition to identify heavy armor versus civilian traffic is a sophisticated filter. It ensured that the trap wasn't wasted on a patrol car or a stray truck. It waited for the main event. This selective targeting capability multiplies the force of a small unit. One operator can set a dozen traps and walk away, knowing they will only spring when the target is worth it. This October 15th event will be studied in war colleges for decades. It is the perfect synthesis of cyber warfare, the AI, electronic warfare, the anti-jamming tech and decoys, kinetic warfare, the explosives, and psychological warfare, the trap. It was a total war operation condensed into 1.3 seconds. The bottleneck effect was absolute. When the lead vehicles stopped due to the first explosions, the rear vehicles kept pushing forward, crushing into the kill zone. The drivers in the middle had nowhere to go. To their left and right, the guardrails and the drop to the river. In front and behind, burning simas of baton toil. It was a cage of their own making. The 10K trap, mentioned in the initial reports, refers to the troops who had crossed before the blast. These units are now effectively cut off from their supply lines. In modern warfare, an army without a supply line is just a crowd of people with guns. They run out of food in 3 days. They run out of fuel in 2. They run out of hope immediately. Ukraine has effectively encircled a division-sized element without risking a single brigade in a flanking maneuver. They use the bridge as the pivot point. We are also hearing reports that the exclusive footage of the strike was captured by the drones themselves before detonation. The fiber optic feed allows for recording right up until the millisecond of impact. This footage, which is slowly leaking out, shows the terrifying perspective of a munition waking up, identifying the underbelly of a T-90 tank just meters above it, and delivering the fatal blow. It is visceral proof of the vulnerability of heavy armor. The Russian response has been chaotic. They have launched retaliatory missile strikes on civilian infrastructure, a predictable tactic of frustration. But militarily, they are paralyzed in this sector. They cannot advance because they have no bridge. They cannot retreat because they are under fire. They are frozen. The use of the ALE-50 tow line decoy was a masterstroke of air defense suppression. The ALE-50 is a towed decoy system, usually deployed from aircraft, that acts as a preferential target for incoming missiles. By rigging these to drones or using them in a localized manner, Ukraine created a missile sponge that absorbed the Russian defensive fire. The expensive interceptors of the S-400 system were wasted on cheap decoys, leaving the magazines empty when the real threat emerged, though in this case, the real threat was already past the defenses, clinging to the bridge itself. This highlights the asymmetry of cost. Russia fires a $2 million missile at a $10,000 decoy. Ukraine destroys a $10 million tank with a $600 drone. The math of war is entirely in Ukraine's favor. You cannot sustain a conflict with those numbers. The bridge explosion is the ultimate expression of this economic warfare. The vaporizing of peace talk leverage is perhaps the most significant long-term consequence. Russia often uses captured territory as a bargaining chip. We will give back this town if you agree to these terms. But by stranding their own army and losing their logistical capability, they have lost the initiative. They are no longer dictating the tempo. They are reacting, and a reacting army is a losing army. The 5,000 psi chamber data point likely comes from post-blast analysis by combat engineers. When a convoy is that dense, the air between the vehicles compresses during the explosion. The shockwave doesn't just pass through, it resonates. It bounces back and forth between the trucks and the bridge deck, creating a zone of intensity that far exceeds a standard open-air blast. This explains why the destruction was so total. It wasn't just the explosives, it was the geometry of the trap. October 15, 2025, marks the day the bridge strategy died for Russia. They can no longer trust their supply lines. Every culvert, every overpass, every spet is now a potential Kizak nest. The paranoia this induces will slow down their logistics to a crawl. They will have to inspect every inch of infrastructure before using it, consuming time and resources they do not have. Ukraine has demonstrated that they are the masters of the shape-shifting battlefield. They turn safe zones into kill zones. They turn bridges into walls. They turn the enemy's strength, mass, into their weakness, targets. The verified success of the fiber optic drone tech will likely spark a global arms race. Every military in the world is now looking at their electronic warfare suites and realizing they have a blind spot. If it doesn't emit a radio wave, they can't see it. If it's hardwired, they can't hack it. The old ways are new again. The tether is the future. As we continue to monitor the situation, the plight of the stranded 10,000 Russian troops becomes the central story. Ukraine has offered them terms of surrender. It is a choice between captivity, starvation. The bridge is gone. The boats are being sunk by FPV drones. The air supply is being interdicted by air defense. The trap is closed. The destruction of the bridge on October 15th was not just an explosion. It was a statement. It was a declaration that Ukraine has adapted, evolved, and perfected the art of 21st century defense. They waited. They watched. And when the moment was perfect, they struck with a precision that has reshaped the war. The bridge is down. The convoy is ash. And the momentum has shifted, perhaps permanently, to the yellow and blue. This is a lesson in patience. The Kajak drone sat there for 3 days, 72 hours of silence. That discipline is what won the day. The technology is impressive, but the human element, the planning, the waiting, the timing, that is what makes this a masterpiece of military art. The Russian army crossed the river, but they never made it to the other side. They were caught in the middle, in a trap set by a defender who knows the terrain, knows the tech, and knows exactly how to break the back of a giant. The focus on the river crossing is crucial. Rivers have historically been the graveyards of armies. From the Berezina to the Donets, crossing water under fire is the most dangerous operation in warfare. But usually, the danger comes from the opposite bank. In this case, the danger came from the crossing itself. The bridge was the weapon. We are seeing verified reports that the AI swarm logic used to trigger the drones is based on a distributed consensus model. The drones voted on when the bridge was full. They shared sensor data through a local mesh, or perhaps even through the fiber links if they were networked. When the vibration threshold was met across all sensors, the fire command was executed globally. This prevented a premature detonation that might have only taken out the lead vehicles. The system waited for the weight of the target to be maximized. This is the scary part for any invading force. You are not fighting just soldiers. You are fighting smart minds. You are fighting infrastructure that hates you. You are fighting a landscape that is wired to destroy you. The 1.1 m lbs ammo chain reaction is a statistic that numbs the mind. 1.1 million pounds. That is roughly 500 tons of high explosive. That is a tactical nuke without the radiation. The energy release would have registered on seismographs across Europe. The crater left in the riverbed will be a permanent geographic feature. Russia's peace talk leverage was built on the perception of inevitability. We are big. We are advancing. You must negotiate. This event shattered that perception. You cannot be inevitable if your army is stuck on the wrong side of a river with no bullets. You cannot be inevitable if your super weapons are fooled by towed decoys. The mask of invincibility has slipped, and underneath is a logistical nightmare. The Kajak rebuff drones have earned their place in history. They are the Davids to the Russian Goliath, small, cheap, tethered, and lethal. They have proven that you don't need a billion-dollar air force to stop an armored column. You just need a spool of glass and a lot of patience. The exclusive footage mentioned shows the final moments. The camera on one of the drones looks down the length of the bridge. You can see the faces of the Russian drivers in the trucks. They look bored. They look tired. They have no idea that they are driving on top of a volcano. Then, the screen goes white. That is the reality of modern war. It is sudden, it is unseen, and it is absolute. As winter approaches, the loss of this bridge means the Russian forces in the south are in critical danger. They cannot rotate troops. They cannot bring in winter gear. They are static targets in a dynamic war. Ukraine has effectively frozen the front line by removing the ability to move. The legacy of this operation will be the Kajak doctrine. The idea that low-cost, high-tech, autonomous traps can defeat conventional mass. It is a doctrine that favors the defender, it favors the innovative, and it favors the patient. Ukraine waited, and Russia paid the price. The details of the decoy operation with the Pantsir missiles are particularly fascinating. The Pantsir is a point defense system designed to shoot down incoming threats. By flooding the sky with cheap decoys, Ukraine forced the system to expend its ready-to-fire missiles. A Pantsir has a limited number of missiles on the rails. Once they are gone, the reload time is significant. It creates a window of vulnerability. But Ukraine didn't even need the window for an airstrike. They used the distraction to cover the sound and the seismic signature of the bridge detonation, ensuring that no last-second reaction could save the convoy. The ALE-50 towed decoy is usually an aviation asset, towed behind a jet. Ukraine's adaptation of this tech, likely mounting it on heavy-lift drones or ground-based launchers, is another example of their MacGyver style of warfare. They take what they have and use it in ways the manufacturer never intended. And it works. The Kazakh drone swarm was the hammer, the decoys were the smoke, the bridge was the anvil, and the Russian army was the iron. This was a victory of intelligence, not just military intelligence, but intellectual intelligence, outthinking the enemy. The Russians played checkers, moving pieces on a board. Ukraine played 3D chess, using the board itself as a weapon. This event serves as a grim reminder to any aggressor. Do not cross the river if you do not own the bridge. And in Ukraine, you do not own anything. Not the ground, not the air, and certainly not the bridges. The verified data is clear. The bridge is destroyed. The convoy is destroyed. The troops are trapped. The Kazakh drone is a proven killer, and Ukraine is the dominant force in this theater. The war continues, but the balance has shifted. October 15, 2025. Remember the date. The sheer logistics of the Russian failure are mind-boggling. 2,400 vehicles. If you line them up with 10 meters spacing, that's a convoy stretching over 30 kilometers. Compressing that onto a bridge, and the immediate approach roads created a target density that is rarely seen. It was a target-rich environment of the highest order, and Ukraine did not miss. The role of the S-400 in this failure is also critical. This system is touted as the best in the world, yet it was completely irrelevant against a threat that came from below, from within the bridge structure itself. It shows the limitations of air defense. It defends the air. It does not defend the infrastructure from parasites clamped to its bones. The 1.3-second coordinated strike speaks to the quality of the communication protocols. To detonate 12 separate charges across a kilometer-long span within nearly a second of each other requires perfect sync. If one blows too early, it might sever the control cables of the others. They had to blow simultaneously. The engineering feat of the trigger system is as impressive as the explosive result. As the smoke clears over the river, the strategic picture is stark. Russia has lost its momentum. Ukraine has gained a massive leverage point. And the world has seen that in the war of the future, the small, smart, and patient will defeat the big, dumb, and loud. The bridge is gone. The trap is sprung. Ukraine dominates. For those analyzing the military hardware, the Kazakhs' ability to clamp is a key innovation. Most drones fly until their battery dies. By clamping and going into sleep mode, the Kazakh extends its operational window from minutes to days. This persistent threat capability is what allowed the ambush. They didn't have to launch when the convoy appeared. They were already there. The use of fiber optics also means no radio signature for Russian SIGINT, signals intelligence, to pick up. Usually, a drone operator can be triangulated by their radio emissions. Here, there were no emissions. The operators could have been kilometers away, safe in a bunker, connected by a thin glass thread. The destruction of the bridge also has a psychological toll on the Russian home front. They were promised a quick victory. They were promised that their technology was superior. Now they see their elite units trapped and their invincible bridge lying in the mud. It cracks the narrative of the Kremlin. This was not just a tactical victory. It was a strategic masterstroke. It halted an offensive, destroyed a division's worth of equipment, and humiliated the enemy command. All for the price of a luxury car. The 5,000 psi chamber effect is what ensured that even the armored vehicles were destroyed. A tank can survive a lot, but it cannot survive being inside a pressure cooker of exploding ammunition. The overpressure crushes the crew, detonates the internal rounds, and rips the turret off. It is total destruction. Ukraine has proven once again that they are the superior fighting force when it comes to adaptation and tactical ingenuity. They took a defensive situation and turned it into an offensive route. They turned a bridge into a bomb. This is the reality of the war in late 2025. It is high-tech, it is ruthless, and it is being won by the side that can innovate faster than the enemy can react. The Kajak drone is the symbol of that innovation. The destroyed bridge is the symbol of Russian failure. As we conclude this analysis, remember the specifics. October 15th, Kajak drones, fiber optics, AI triggers, a 1.3-second strike, a 2,400 vehicle convoy, and a bridge that is no more. This is the new face of war. The Kajak or Kijak drone, with its immunity to electronic warfare, essentially renders the billions Russia spent on EW systems useless. It's a paradigm shift. If you can't jam it, you have to shoot it. And you can't shoot a mosquito that is hiding under a bridge girder until they bool. Second, it explodes. The trap was perfect. The execution was flawless. The result was catastrophic for the invader. Ukraine stands strong, dominant, and ready for the next move. Utro, that bridge wasn't just destroyed. It was weaponized. With patience, precision, and innovation, Ukraine turned mass into a liability and rewrote the rules of river warfare. Like and subscribe for more updates. Peace.